Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Noir Central Station, and today we're going to be talking about 1945's Fallen Angel, directed by Otto Preminger, starring Alice Faye, Dana Andrews, and Linda Darnell. So I first saw this movie, I'm pretty sure, like maybe about 5 years ago. It was whenever it was on Noir Alley. It was on TCM, and I fell in love with it from the start. It was definitely, up until that point, like, I guess you could say, like, the most obscure noir I had ever seen. I've always loved film noir, but it's always been kind of like the greatest hits of film noir that I watched for most of my life, and it wasn't until about 5 or 6 years ago that I started digging deeper into the genre itself, the style of film itself, and found a bunch of hidden gems, B movies, so on and so forth. The only Otto Preminger, Dana Andrews noir I knew of was Laura, which, is a classic. But I hadn't even actually seen that. I saw this first, and then eventually I saw Laura. But so this one starts out with Dana Andrews, who plays like a drifter con man of sorts that's kind of, a staple of the noir genre and slash style. And he's like asleep on a bus, and he's trying to get to San Francisco, but they kind of kick him off the bus because he doesn't have enough money to pay for the rest of the ride to San Francisco. And so he has no money. He's in this small town, and he goes right to a little cafe, and he's immediately infatuated with a woman who he feels like can be, the rest of his life. And so you get introduced to a bunch of other characters. I think he goes by like the old pop. He's like the owner of the cafe, and Linda Darnell's boss. She's a waitress at this cafe. Then you see an ex-cop who is hanging out there as well. It's kind of like the mainstay in the whole little town. You also have John Carradine, who plays a traveling psychic, I guess you could say, and he just goes around, gathering people up and saying that he speaks to their dead relatives and stuff. And all these characters are interacting in this town. Dana Andrews kind of forces his way into working with John Carradine's character, and through that he meets Alice Kay's character, who her and her sister are the kids of the former mayor of the town who has passed away, and they are kind of like the moral compasses of the town, like part of the temperance unions and all that kind of stuff. And so you got all these characters, and then a murder happens, and you're trying to figure out who did it and why. So even though the murder and who's murdered is a pretty big plot of this movie, I'm not going to say it in the synopsis because I noticed it doesn't even say it on the back of the box. It just says a bunch of stuff leads to a shocking murder. And I did not know anything about who was murdered going into it when I saw it. So I think leaving that just a mystery for you guys is like good enough. So Dana Andrews, his main thing is just trying to get some money so he could survive. And Alex Faye's character is like really, they have a lot of money from when their father died. And so he kind of tries to get in there and get her money in his way that he can, meaning trying to get her to marry him. And he just really wants to get on with the rest of his life. And because he knows all these other characters, it's not going to be that easy. And that's where a lot of the mystery comes in, of like who really had the motive to kill a certain person. So starting out, this movie kind of feels like it's going to be like a Nightmare Alley type film, where the plot kind of, it's so dark and so like full of like that great noir, characteristic of like having great shadows and just kind of like crappy rundown locations. And the characters, like Dana Andrews' character, is not necessarily likable at all. In fact, he's pretty much a piece of crap. Like from the get-go, he does not treat women well, and he is just not a good guy. But he's our, protagonist in this movie. So, and then him and his relationship with like Alice Faye's character kind of goes into like a little bit of the melodrama and more soapy elements of like a relationship, but it's balanced with just enough darkness and mystery and shadows that it kind of reaches a really good balance. I will say I love this film from beginning to end, but you could tell it's been chopped up a lot. Behind the scenes of this movie, Linda Darnell plays like, I guess you could say, kind of the femme fatale. She is like, the more streetwise, sultry woman compared to the saintly style of Alice Faye's character. But Linda Darnell was a newcomer, and Daryl F. Zanuck with 20th Century Fox just really wanted to push her. And at the time, Alice Faye was like one of the highest, box office people to be in movies. She was known as being in a ton of musicals and stuff, and that's why she got top billing. And she was very frustrated when she first saw a cut of the movie because she thinks most of her performance, great part of her performance, was cut out. And she famously walked out of the studio and didn't make another movie for like 20 years. So in watching that, you could actually see how there is kind of like a missing balance with the characters. For somebody who's top billed, she's not really in the movie a ton, at least starting out. And when she is, you feel like you may have missed something about her character. And that's because a lot of her performance was left on the cutting room floor to make more screen time for Linda Darnell's character, who I kind of wish they would have kept all of Alice Faye's scene in there. And I will say that every time Linda Darnell is on screen, you're completely captivated with her and her performance and stuff like that. So I guess maybe it was hard. I don't know what the heck that was. So I was really captivated with her performance, and maybe they just had a hard time finding a balance between the two characters. I definitely think it would have made the movie even better, but with that said, I loved every frame of this movie. The cinematography was done by Joseph Lachelle. He is also well known for doing tons of noir, and one of my all-time favorite movies, The Apartment, he was a cinematographer for, and he just has such a good eye for how things should look. The shadows, the set of this movie is just incredible. It's just richly drenched in blackness, and it's just brilliant. Now, the day scenes that take place during the day, they're average day scenes, but he really makes up for kind of like a bland daytime look with the nighttime. And maybe that's intentional because, the nighttime is when all the darkness and stuff happens. So yeah, this was released in 1945. It was kind of like unfairly compared to Laura, which is, from beginning to end, a better film. But I think this one is great on its own. The imbalance of some of the characters and stuff like that and their stories makes for kind of like a weirdness to it at times. But I just think that's what makes this incredibly unique and a very good and different film noir. I feel like it has the recipe for like a great film noir, but there's like a little bit of awkwardness, like I said, to the story that kind of gives its own flavor in there. And yeah, it's great. And currently my dog is on his little bed out here scratching it. So this has been an episode full of noises. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week. Take care.